Welcome to a special episode of I'll Have You Know. I'm your host, Maya Pomeroy, Rice Business Class of 2022. Today, we're celebrating the life and legacy of a dear friend and leader in the Rice business community, Scott Gale, Class of 2019. Scott left an indelible mark on this podcast and everyone fortunate enough to know him. Scott wasn't just my co-host on I'll Have You Know. He's the reason I joined the team. With his characteristic generosity and vision, he encouraged me to blend my background in broadcast journalism with my passion for Rice business. That's who he was, a deeply caring friend who saw potential in others and inspired them to shine. Scott's impact reached far beyond this podcast. At Rice, he graduated Beta Gamma Sigma, received the Jones Citizen Award, and co-founded the Jones Student Association for Executives. He served on the Rice Business Alumni Board, always strengthening the community he so cherished. Professionally, Scott founded Halliburton Labs in Houston, where he championed clean energy innovation. His work reflected a deep commitment to purpose and progress. But Scott was never just about work. Scott was about people. Whether captivating audiences with his voice or devoting himself to his family and community, he brought joy and connection to every moment. In September, we lost Scott after his courageous battle with cancer. Even in his hardest moments, he lived with resilience, grace, and a determination to make the most of every single day. His legacy reminds us of what it means to live fully and with intention. Today, we celebrate Scott by revisiting some of his highlights on this podcast and sharing reflections from those who knew and loved him. Let's begin with some of Scott's unforgettable moments behind the mic.
Welcome to the I'll Have You Know podcast. I'm your host, Scott Gale. I'm here with Chuck Yates, Rice undergrad, 91, Rice Business School, 94.
Now, did I get selected because I didn't pay my parking tickets? This is like my penance to the university.
Cat's out of the bag, Chuck.
All right.
I've come here with a collection.
There we go. There we go.
It's the privilege to be here kind of on your home turf.
Your home turf as well.
We're at home.
This is the home field. For those of you who don't know, Scott and I both have podcasts published by Digital Wildcatters, and this is the Digital Wildcatters podcasting studio.
This is it. Encourage you guys to check it out. We'll talk a bit about Chuck Yates Needs a Job podcast. I want to hear a bit more about the origin story around that. But I wanted to kind of just start a little bit chronologically and go back because the Yates family has a lot of connectivity with Rice University. Can you share a little bit about kind of some of that family history?
Yeah. So I'm Charles Wilbur Yates III. Charles Wilbur Yates Sr. So my grandfather was class of 30, 31, 32, somewhere in there. I should probably know the date. So he went to Rice. Great aunt went to Rice in the late 30s. I don't think she got a degree, or early 40s, somewhere. She attended classes. Then you had mom and dad both graduate from Rice in the early to mid 60s. You had Uncle Terry graduate from Rice in the late 60s. Then you had me, Brother Jay, Brother Kenny all graduate from Rice in the 90s.
So when you were graduating high school and deciding to go to college, was it even a conversation or was it?
I didn't have a choice. Didn't have a choice. So this was kind of funny. I decided sophomore year in high school that I was going to go to Harvard and went and announced that to my parents. Scared the hell out of my mom. She's like, oh my God, my poor little baby from Richmond, Texas is going to go off to the East Coast. Is going to become a rabble-rouser, liberal, marry Amy Carter and start protesting and all this. Dad says, don't worry, I got this. And Dad said, Harvard's a really good school, Chuck. If you go there, I'll even pay for you to go there, but you got to go visit. You can't just show up on campus. I go, okay, Dad, I'll go next summer. And Dad goes, nah, why don't you go over Christmas break? Mom says, to this day, the hardest thing she ever did with parenting me, they let me get on a plane to to go to Boston, Massachusetts in the dead of winter, and it was 73 degrees in Houston, Texas. I didn't take a coat. I didn't know any better. I mean, I was just like, it's 73 degrees in Houston. Why do I need a coat? I got up there and I had like one pair of jeans. Everything else I packed was shorts. And my mom knew this. And so anyway, I got there and kind of walked around campus, in my T-shirt. And I think I went and bought a jacket or something. So I'm freezing to death. Needless to say, I didn't get into Harvard, but I've changed the story so that at the end of the tour, I walked into the admissions office and asked Harvard to tear up my application. That's a much better story, right? Yeah.
I like it.
Thank
I like
you.
it. That's some great parenting approach by the parents as well. That's fantastic.
Typical dad. Yeah.
With his deep signature voice and talent for meaningful conversation, Scott interviewed top leaders across industries. One standout moment was his live interview with Rice University's provost, Amy Ditmar.
I wanted to explore a little bit just sort of how you see the future of Rice and the sort of the coming steps, how the strategy is unfolding. I think all of us that are close to the university appreciate that things are meaningfully different today than they were 5 years from now, and wanted to just kind of explore when everything goes according to plan. It never does, but when things go according to plan, what will be different about Rice? What will be the same on sort of a kind of a pick a horizon, 5 years, 10
5
years?
to 10. That's what we often talk about. I mean, I think that the first thing, as I've gone around and met people and I did kind of started those relationships I just mentioned, one of the things I asked people was, what do you love about Rice? I.e., what do you want me to not screw up in some senses with the change? And so a lot of that was around the care of the students and the commitment to the students, either the graduate students or the undergrads. There is just this incredibly deep, you've got a connection with the faculty that you don't see in a lot of places. So I don't think that won't change. I mean, so, are we going to grow? Yes, but we can't grow so much that we can't keep that commitment. And when I say we're going to grow, undergrad's already been in a phased-in growth. Many of our graduate programs are growing. Rice is it's an amazing institution. So I think being able to educate and impact more individuals is part of the mission.
Let's hear a few more clips from Scott's interviews. One with Rice Business's Houston Endowed Professor of Management, Don Van Knippenberg, and another from a live event with Ruth Reitmeyer, Director of Coaching at Rice Business, and Brent Smith, Senior Associate Dean for Executive Education and Associate Professor of Management and Psychology at Rice Business.
Talk a bit about those circumstances to extract the value of diverse teams. I mean, I'm assuming it's some things like psychological safety or trust. What are sort of the more statistically significant sort of...
and you're assuming correctly. So it starts with understanding that diversity, from this perspective, is a resource. It's an informational resource. So if you have a more diverse team, you have more diversity of perspectives, information, knowledge.
The potential for...
It's potential, exactly. So, but having the resource is not the same as using the resource effectively.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is what is necessary to use the resource effectively. Right. And how do you use it? It's knowledge.
And maybe
right?
the opposite as well. Like what sort of suppresses it?
Exactly.
Kind of what are those?
And what we know is to use that resource effectively. What does it mean to use that resource effectively? It means open-minded exchange, discussion, and integration of those diverse perspectives. Okay. I need to say, so, you know stuff that I don't know. So educate me.
Sure. A willingness to listen and open.
A willingness to listen, a willingness to ask questions, to understand, to recognize that there's stuff you don't know. And for instance, in this example, also willingness on your side to invest in bringing me up to speed, to explain to me. Yeah. You tell me something, I don't get it. You're willing to, invest in explaining it, etc. Yeah. So, and that is, as you said, psychological safety, but it also starts with what we call mental models of what you're doing. It starts with understanding that this is the process you need to benefit from diversity.
So one of the goals here is to demystify leadership a little bit. And so I want to just sort of cannonball in and kind of ask the question, like, as you've kind of on-ramped to this journey and as you're kind of traveling down this highway, what have you changed your mind about leadership? along the way? Some orthodoxy or some approach or process?
I don't know if I would say that this is changing my mind. I would say that what has been reaffirmed consistently over time about leadership is that the belief that there might be some kind of magic bullet, that really can solve the problem of leadership. It's kind of unrealistic. I think those who've been in my class probably have heard me, belabor the point that leadership is something that is just unfortunately quite contextual. And without an understanding of context, it's really difficult to understand leadership.
I want to sort of talk about this, how people are integrating leadership coaching into kind of their day-to-day. Like, what are some tips or advice or things to bring leadership coaching into kind of a tangible, I show up at work tomorrow, I can kind of go do these kinds of things. I want to get it like tactical.
I like it. I mean, I think leadership coaching is built on several things, right? Like empathy and human connection, authenticity, vulnerability, intellectual humility. Like if you can embody a coach-like approach as a leader and bring those things to work, you're going to inspire people. You're going to connect with people. Show me that you are human, that I can go to work and be fully human also.
Before Scott took up the host mantle, he was a guest on I'll Have You Know. He chatted with then-host Christine Dobbin about his impressive career journey and how his time at Rice shaped him.
You grew up in Washington State, got a chemical engineering degree at Brigham Young University. What initially brought you to Texas?
Kind of dumb luck. I really lucked into getting into oil and gas and getting into the state. I had never stepped foot in the state of Texas until I moved here with my first job. I was a Pacific Northwest kid. I was a Camas paper maker, was our mascot, small paper mill town. And for me, kind of growing up, you were either a lumberjack or you were an engineer at the mill. And it was just kind of the people that were in my life that seemed to be doing well and seemed to kind of know what was going on were associated with the mill. And so I just had it in my head at a young age that getting a chemical engineering degree would be a good idea. I didn't know really what that would entail. So I made my way to Brigham Young. And my first experience with engineering was out at a plant in West Virginia, where I discovered that chemical engineering is really, you're just a glorified plumber. And it was clear to me that I, and no disrespect to the engineers out there, but for me personally, it was something that I couldn't kind of wrap my head around doing that kind of work. And so that internship was really valuable for me. And so I went searching for kind of business related jobs with an engineering degree. And Dow Chemical had this program, they call it the Commercial Development Program, where they take engineering undergrads and they put them through 6 months of, I joke, boot camp for sales, and they turn you into a B2B chemical salesperson. But one of the things you commit to in doing that program is geographic flexibility, that they can send you to anywhere in the US in any one of their business lines. And that seemed like a good idea to me. And so I showed up, did that program, and they said, okay, we just kind of launched this oil and gas facing business. We're going to move you to Houston, and your first customer is going to be Schlumberger. And that was, to me, having learned that, that's not how you say it, but that they had not, they'd done some market research and other things, but our engagement with the oil and gas sector at the time as a business was something nascent. And so I moved to Houston and started calling on oil field services companies and really fell in love with kind of the concept of hydraulic fracturing and that technology could bring energy independence to the U.S. And it was just a really fascinating thing. And so I started to chase that, and that's what I was solving for. And my role previous to this one was I was managing Halliburton's global hydraulic fracturing strategy. And so for me, that was something that I had set my sights on a number of years ago. That's a long way to say that's ultimately how I got to Texas, is I just lucked into oil and gas. I sort of signed up for this lottery. They trained me to sell chemicals to large organizations, and they parachuted me into Houston, and that's kind of where I've been ever since.
You were part of the Rice MBA for Executives class of 2019, just a class ahead of me. How did that experience help you move into the position you're in today? first of all, by, having the degree, having that on paper, but also just what you were able to gain from the program and how you're able to put that in action today in your day-to-day work.
One of the big draws for me in going to Rice was their entrepreneurship program, sort of broadly, if I can sort of generalize that. That's maybe not a fair way to characterize it, but Rice is very passionate about entrepreneurship, not only at the business school, but in other parts of the university. And it was something that was just of interest to me. It was sort of this elusive thing for me, being a guy that had spent a bunch of time in large corporates. I'd launched products and done other things, but the idea of entrepreneurship was just really fascinating to me. And I had taken some entrepreneurship classes in undergrad and other things. And so when I got into Rice, I was very much actively trying to plug into the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about our conversation today?
I would just say there are so many opportunities out there, lots of different things to be done. I'm just a big fan of being mission driven. There's a lot of things that are happening in this world that need improvement and need change, and just be a force for good and use your powers for good, so to speak. And so that's something that I would just express. People should think about their purpose and what they're trying to accomplish, and the legacy that they want to leave behind in whatever form that takes.
Let's honor Scott's advice by striving to live with purpose and to be a force for good in our own lives. And finally, let's hear from a few of the people in the Rice business community who knew and loved him.
I was lucky enough to be put in the same Rice Executive MBA class of 2019 as Scott. Scott immediately stood out, not just because of his memorable voice, but because of his wisdom, curiosity, kindness, and leadership. When Scott first told me about his initial diagnosis and prognosis over coffee, I went home and wrote down all the thoughts that he had shared about how he was choosing to face this, how he would focus on his family and leave an echo. I was so inspired by his spirit. I feel incredibly fortunate to have known Scott, and I know I'm not the only one.
I have so many great memories of Scott and spending time with him and working with him on the Rice Alumni Association board. But I think what really stands out to me is how much he really cared about who I was and remembered everything that I told him. Every time I'd see him, he would check in on my family, my business, everything that was going on. It was so thoughtful all the time and really took the time to listen to me, and he just showed he cared all the time. Just a true servant leader and a man of people.
Scott Gale was a true force of nature, an inspiring leader, a devoted volunteer, and someone who made everyone around him better. As a fellow member of the Rice Business Alumni Association board and co-host of I'll Have You Know, Scott brought incredible energy and passion to everything he touched. He built a legacy of service, always leading by example and inspiring others to step up and give back. His influence will continue to ripple through Rice business community and beyond. Scott's impact was profound, and his memory will forever remind us of the power of dedication and heart.
The opportunity I had to get to know Scott has challenged me to be a better and more compassionate person, father, and friend. He was so intellectually inquisitive, incredibly engaging, and at his core, supportive and caring. There are many memories I think of when reflecting on Scott, but one that stands out was talking about family and his focus on maintaining a driven work-life, or better yet, life-work balance, to ensure there was always time for those you love, which were his wife and kids. I've taken that to center myself when times are either busy or challenging, and this is a testament to his ability to connect and care. He is greatly missed.
Scott Gale was an undeniably inspiring leader. His seemingly insatiable curiosity and creativity made him a human force multiplier. He shared his talents liberally to challenge conventional wisdom and was fearless yet graceful in his approach to advancing innovation. I will forever admire him for his bravery and resolve, and for unselfishly and widely sharing his far too short time on this earth.
I served with Scott for several years on the Rice Business Alumni Board, and I was immediately wowed by his exceptional radio voice. I loved the curious spirit he embodied and always appreciated how easy it was to have conversations with him. Scott was truly an amazing gift to the Houston business community and beyond, and to our board. His energy and spirit will be greatly missed, and I am personally grateful to have crossed paths with him.
The time I spent with Scott always felt very rewarding. He was always intellectually engaging and very welcoming when we were conversing. As part of our alumni board Secret Santa, which we called Secret Sammy, he sent me a book called The Codebreaker by Walter Isaacson. Reading the book expanded my horizons about the biomedical field and gave me a new appreciation for the work that was done to develop the COVID-19 vaccines. The book will always be a reminder of Scott's intellect and his ability to share it with others. He will be greatly missed.
Scott Gale was an amazing human being. His impact will forever be felt here in Houston and more broadly across the energy space and in every space that he touched. We connected over entrepreneurship, rice, startups, energy, and just general shared passion. And that's really what was so great about Scott. When he found something, he put all of his passions into it, and it really shone through. And it could be felt by everyone that got involved with him. I'll forever cherish the moments and the memories that we have together, and definitely miss him. And his impact will come with me in all of the things and the places that I continue to focus on that we had such a shared interest in. Scott, we miss you, we love you, and thank you for everything.
I first met Scott when he came to my office. He was a current MBA student at the time, and he told me that he was ready to make a donation to the business school. As I'm sure you can imagine, this is a very rare gesture from a current student. It was also just so incredibly generous and showed Scott's sincerity and his huge heart. Little did I know that that first meeting with Scott would turn into a very long conversation about our upbringings, our families, and about our shared values. Over the years, Scott became a good friend to me, a trusted advisor, and somebody that I just valued working with. More than words can say. Scott's kindness, optimism, and his drive to make the world better touched everybody around him. We will always miss Scott. I will always miss Scott. And I hope that we can honor his legacy by embracing the same generosity that he shared with us.
Thank you to Adrienne Mangual, Bethany Andel, Brian Jackson, David Holmes, Carrie Sprung, Petra Isaac, Kate Halloway, Sean Marshall, and Elena Schusler for sharing your memories of Scott with us. And now let's hear from Dean Peter Rodriguez, who reflects on Scott's remarkable contributions to the Rice business community.
Every time I think about Scott Gale, I smile and I am deeply grateful to have known him. It's really rare to find people like that leave a lasting impact on your life, a truly lasting and significant impact. But I think Scott did for me and everyone he touched. It almost sounds miraculous, but I think it's true. It's even rarer to find a student who not only brings a lot to the program, but leaves so much for so many others, and many others that never got a chance to meet him or that he would never meet. Scott made a real positive difference. He's in a very small handful set of people who made a really positive difference as students here that endures. He helped us with the MBA at Rice. He lent his amazing, beautiful, powerful voice to the right causes and did so really genuinely and effortlessly. From the outside all the way to the core, Scott was a wonderful, very good man, a great friend. And I miss him dearly and will remember him fondly for the rest of my life.
As we close this tribute, I'm moved by the love and the admiration shared. Scott had a unique gift for inspiring and connecting with others, leaving us better for having known him. Through his leadership, storytelling, and zest for life, Scott reminds me of what truly matters: living in the moment, uplifting all those who knew him, and chasing the things that light us up inside. His encouragement and belief in others were gifts I'll carry with me, always. They say it's not the length of the life, but the depth of the life that matters. Scott lived deeply. And while we'll miss his voice, wisdom, and humor every day, his spirit will continue to echo in the lives he touched and the legacy he leaves behind. Scott would always close with a single powerful word that reflected his optimism and his resilience. So in his honor, we'll echo him by saying, and those of you that know the word, say it with me. Onward.